At Suncrest United Methodist Church, we are coming out of exile. Thanks for joining us for this first section of Out of Exile. You're going to hear what Scripture says. You're going to hear from one of our experts who's going to tell us about what the vaccine is doing in our community and what we are looking forward to. And we're going to hear from someone in our church who's going to help us to deal with the anxieties of coming out of exile. Thanks for joining us. There are lists of names and then there are lists of names. For instance, there could be a list of names in the newspaper that tells you who won the $1 million, who won the fancy trucks and the guns, but your name isn't on that list and you don't know anybody on that list, and so that list is not very important to you. But there might be another kind of list of names, for instance, in a card that you receive, and there's a list of names of people who care about you and who have supported you, who have remembered you, and that list of names is a good list of names. Let me tell you about a couple of lists of names that are good lists. The prophet Ezra, chapters 1 and 2. In chapter 2, there is a long list of names. Here's the backstory. In 586 BC, the nation of Judah, the city of Jerusalem, was utterly destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian armies. Most of the people were taken captive and removed from the land, taken somewhere else to live in the Babylonian Empire, and their city was flattened. About 100 years later, a new king, King Cyrus, says, all right, you all can return to Judah and you can return to Jerusalem and you can start rebuilding. And in Ezra chapter 1, verse 5, there's an amazing verse that says that God stirred the hearts of a number of people. And they returned, and they worked, and they started to rebuild, and they worshiped together. Now, these people, this list of people, shared a few things in common. They were bound by family, a nation really. They were bound together by tragedy. And they were bound together because together they acknowledged God. They were a people who would believe that the exile of 100 years before did not mean that God's promise had failed. They believed in God's continuing promise. And they believed that now was the time to embody the faithfulness of God. And they would embody the faithfulness of God in their worship and in their work of rebuilding. Now, if you read the list in Ezra chapter 2, it is a list that contains priests and Levites and musicians and gatekeepers and prophets and teachers and worshipers who would come with sacrifices and prayers. And years after the rebuilding of the city and of the temple, when things had gotten back to sort of normal, there would be folks who would read that list of names in Ezra chapter 2, and they would say, that's a good list. That's a list of folks whose worship and whose work embodied God's faithfulness for us. So I'm standing in Old Drummond on the campus of Suncrest. And this particular building was built in 1850. And the people who built this building and who worshiped and did Sunday school and all those other things here, they were bound together. They were bound together through a civil war, through a Spanish flu, through polio, through 2 world wars, and who knows what else. They were bound together, but those folks are on a good list. Their worship and their work embodied the faithfulness of God for us. And we're repurposing this place for today so that we can be on a good list for folks who will come in the future. I bet you've got a list too, don't you? I bet you have a list of people that you've missed. Kids who run the aisles and who laugh, who steal candy. I bet you miss people and their laughter. The storytellers that you would see in the narthex, I bet you miss them. Our seniors, they're on a list. And I need you to hear that you're on a list. You're on a good list too. God is stirring our hearts and is calling us to worship and to work and to embody God's faithfulness for those who will come after us. Scripture speaks, and the prophet Ezra says to us today, there are lists of names, and then there are lists of names. There are lists that have encouraged us and who embody God's faithfulness for us, whose worship and work have blessed us. And there's a list that's being written today. We, who in today's challenges will be bound together, and we will, with our work and worship, encourage those who will come after. Listen, Scripture is speaking to us today.
So tell us who you are and what you do and what you've been up to.
Sure. So I'm a pharmacist at WVU with WVU School of Pharmacy. I'm an associate professor of clinical pharmacy at the school. And since December the 15th, a big role of mine has been providing vaccinations to our community. So I've been out there on the front lines. I'm a community pharmacist by training and trait, but I shifted job responsibilities when the call went out and there was a need and opportunity, I think, to help our community. Our team at the School of Pharmacy, working with others, including the School of Nursing and our student health, we've provided over 15,000 vaccinations to our university community alone. And so that's my area. Vaccinations, immunizations are one of my passions and one of my research interests. And so it's something that I try to stay up on, obviously, and particularly with COVID-19.
Thank you. So one of the things we want our church community to know is, how's this vaccine working? What impact is it having in Mon County and our communities?
Yeah, sure. So we know these vaccines are working really, really well, and we're excited about that. Upwards of 95% effectiveness against symptoms of COVID-19, meaning symptomatic disease is the term that you may hear of. Each vaccine, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna or J&J, may be slightly different, but all are providing wonderful protection against disease. And we know with the new variants, such as the Delta variant that I think everybody's hearing about right now, they seem to be doing really well as well. Now, we don't have the numbers of Delta variant here in West Virginia or even in the United States that other parts of the world have. But if we look at information from our doctors and colleagues in England, it's looking really good there. So there have been some reports out of England with, for example, the Pfizer vaccine and Pfizer and Moderna. They both work about the same way in terms of their mechanism. So we would think while it's not factual, we don't have the data yet to say Moderna is exactly the same. They work about the same. So they're saying that with both doses of the vaccine, if a patient's received both doses of that Pfizer vaccine, that up to upwards of 80% effective against the Delta variants, which is wonderful news. And with only one dose, still effective, but slightly less effective. So you want to make sure that you're fully vaccinated. But it's good news on that forefront. That's exactly what we wanted to hear.
Okay. So, for instance, in Mon County, we will have seen in the last few months a significant reduction in the number of hospitalizations and positive infection rates and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. We still continue to see numbers that really are the lowest we've had in months. Now, I say that because, you know, we're still in the midst of things, and we do have new variants that will come up. This is a virus, and viruses are smart. They change themselves to you know, they want to survive, right? So, but right now we're in pretty darn good shape. We're seeing numbers in terms of cases, you know, mostly stay in the single digits in Mon County. We've had a couple of bumps, and usually after the weekend, you know, the reports on Monday are a little bit higher because they take the whole weekend into account, which is, I think, something to think about. And this week, the number of deaths, they went back and had to fix some data. So there was a slight bump one day with deaths, but still we're seeing the ICU numbers go down. So those that are seriously ill and in our intensive care units, our hospitals are not full, which is a blessing to all of us in healthcare, that we're not being overloaded right now at the hospitals, and our numbers have stayed down. Morgantown and Mon County have done a good job. We've done a good job with vaccines, with uptake and decision making of vaccines, and I think certainly that's helping.
Great. So would it be correct to say that those who are being infected right now or having to be hospitalized or having significant symptoms are usually those who have not been vaccinated?
That is a fair assumption to say. And sadly, that seems to be the case. Now, it is not always the case. And, you know, there's an old saying, it says, you know, nothing in life is assured except death and taxes, at least. And well, then you got your spiritual life. So you could argue that as well, right? But in terms of vaccines, right, we know that if you are vaccinated and fully vaccinated, the risk of hospitalization and severe disease, you are really minimizing that to a point where it's a pretty safe bet that you're not going to end up really sick and in the hospital. So yeah, I think that's a safe thing to say. And we look at the variants worldwide. What experts are finding and reporting is that those that are ending up hospitalized or dying from the variants are those that haven't been vaccinated. So that unvaccinated population, sadly, is the population that we're still seeing those numbers that we don't like happen to.
Okay. So we're seeing about approximately a 90% effective rate with the vaccines. And then if we're out in the community, a mask just adds to that effectiveness?
Yes, I believe it does. You know, there's guidelines that our Centers for Disease Control give us, the CDC. And they do, and if congregants are interested, we can certainly make those available somewhere, or at least provide a link. But if you are fully vaccinated, you know, they give us a list of things that we can safely do without a mask and things that we can't safely do. But certainly there is no harm at all. And there may be some potential benefit in still continuing to wear that mask fully vaccinated, especially if you're in a household that, you know, may have individuals that aren't vaccinated yet, families with young children. If not to provide extra protection, I'm serving as a role model for my child. So but that's a personal decision. And certainly, again, there is no harm in wearing the mask. I will speak from personal example of having worn a mask on several occasions for 8 straight hours. And I was breathing fine. I was doing fine. I think I was making really good decisions. And so there is certainly no harm in doing that.
Okay, thank you. What do we see happening in the coming months? What are some of the things that we see coming down the pike as far as vaccinations available to younger folks, or a booster? What do we see happening?
Yeah. So we have exciting news, I think, on that. And from every training session I've been to, webinar update, and I try to attend a lot of those, we're hearing that the vaccines will be available to our younger patients very soon, early fall. Trials and enrollments in those studies with younger children are wrapping up now. They need a full month to look at that data before and report it back, and the FDA needs to look at that and put out their recommendations, but we would expect that in early fall. Now, in our youngest of youngest patients, and I might say under 5 probably, it'll be a little bit longer, but not much. We may very well be able to get vaccines made available to all of our patients, no matter of age, I'd say before Christmas. So that is really exciting and really, really good. The other exciting thing is this, and as a parent of a 9-year-old, I've been reading a lot about children and the vaccines, and some reports are showing that they're finding that children may mount or have an earlier positive response to the vaccine, meaning that our bodies are making something called antibodies, which are those defense agents against disease, that children may be making those earlier even than adults, which isn't surprising because kids have really robust and healthy immune systems, better than sometimes adults. And so they may be even having better responses to vaccines earlier, but we don't know that for sure yet. And so what research is doing right now is they're assessing doses, whether kids need the same dose or a lower dose. Do they need 1 dose or 2 doses? But I think we're going to be really excited and happy with what comes out. Boosters is a little bit another of a story because we're still in the thick of things and these viruses are still changing. My gut, and I told you this, I will always preface it by saying this is what we know and this is what my gut is telling me. My gut is going to say that we're going to need a booster, potentially at least older adults that may not have, or adults that may not have as healthy as immune systems, but children may too need that. We're still studying children. So I don't even want to jump to that. But if this is anything like other viruses, there's a real chance that we're going to need potentially a booster, but that's not a bad thing. That's expected. These viruses are smart, right? They're smart. They want to survive. They want to change their looks so that they can trick our body sometimes. We could need a booster.
Great. Okay, kind of one final thing, and this is probably what's your gut. Would you feel comfortable being at a church gathering that's outside and at one that is in our sanctuary?
Yeah, sure. So I can talk about that. I mean, I'll use our family vacation as an example, right? So we took our family, my husband, me, and our soon to be 10-year-old son. We went over into Yorktown, Virginia, and Williamsburg, and even Busch Gardens. And I think Busch Gardens would probably be a really good example because there were a lot of people there. And we did feel comfortable going to those places. We did try to stay outside, especially if we were not wearing masks. But if we were in large crowds, even outside at Busch Gardens, we did wear masks, not just for ourselves, but again, to model for my son. But I have no problem being inside right now. Of course, I have been inside with people since December 15th, albeit wearing a mask. And I think that, you know, it's a risk versus benefit decision, and it's so individual. And I think the thing as a healthcare provider that I want to stress is, um, you have to do what feels right and comfortable for yourself and your family. But I will tell people that we know these vaccines are working, 95% effective. Bottom line, yes, I feel comfortable being outside and inside, certainly wearing a mask, and even outside, especially amongst people that I know, and in a community where I know the vaccine coverage rate is higher, such as in Morgantown. I'm a little more comfortable taking off a mask, but because we do still have a child that is unvaccinated, if you see me with a mask on, it means a couple things. It means, one, I'm trying to set a good example for him. And two, I'm still trying to protect him, because while I know my vaccines are 95% effective, I would feel really bad if that 5% would be why he would get sick. So my cat is trying to say hi right now. Sorry.
No problem. All right. Would you have any final thoughts for us, or advice for us, or
Um,
encouragement for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the encouragement would just be that, we
Need more cats.
my son just brought me our cat here, but I think that, my encouragement would be, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, to please consider it. I try to really be an open door and help people work through those decisions and questions. And so if there are people in our congregation or our community that have questions, I'm happy to sit down and talk with them. And you're welcome to give them my contact information. But to please consider being vaccinated, so that we can all feel comfortable getting safely back in the doors and on those pews every week, which I think, we're in such a different place right now than we were last summer, that it's nice to see things happening again. And I'm just excited that we've gotten to this point. It's a blessing.
Well, John, tell us what you do, and we'll hear how you're in a position to offer us some help today.
Okay. All right. So first off, I've been a member of Suncrest United Methodist Church for over 30 plus years. And that's my church home. And that's my church. You guys are my church family. I'm a therapist. So I have a master's degree in social work. I'm employed at SciMed, outpatient psychiatric services in Morgantown. And so it's an outpatient practice. And I see folks from the ages of 14 or whatever. And I super enjoy it. And I feel that that's my calling. That's my gift. That's one of, my talents that God gave me. And, I retired from WVU 3 years ago, and started working in a private practice. And I do that. I work probably about 2.5 days a week, and I love it.
Wonderful. You're a great resource. So let me ask you a question. We have been isolated for probably going on 16 months now. And what I'm reading is that is going to have some lasting impacts on us, even if we get back to some sort of normal.
Right.
What are your thoughts on how the isolation may be affecting some of us?
Right. And there's been a lot of studies and a lot of articles that have been written about this. That when you're isolated and you're cut off from families, friends, your support system, that will escalate people's anxiety just in that. It can increase the likelihood that folks can have some depression. It can create more family conflict because you're there with each other 24/7. Where before both parties were working, you only saw each other maybe a couple of hours a day. I was just reading an article in preparation for this, and the therapist who wrote that article said, I had 12-hour days, and 2 hours she had a 2-hour commute, and then sometimes she might have to work over. And now to be there, her husband is working remotely too. They're with each other all the time, and so that's a lot of pressure. And so it's important for us to find some outlets. But of course, one of the things that we know about mental health is at any given time in the United States, we probably have 15, probably 15 million people that have depression. Okay, so you add the pandemic and being in a lockdown for the amount of time that we have been, that will increase that. Over the past year, we've seen more like elementary school kids who are dealing with anxiety and depression. Parents are having to be school teachers to work and then do homework. People are having to adjust to doing Zoom, to doing online, to providing services online. Some people have lost their jobs. So this has had a tremendous impact on all of us. And we're all going to be changed as a result of it. This has been a year and a half, like 16 months, like you said. And we're not totally back to normal. One of the first things that happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and I'll share this. So I'm in a store, and I wasn't thinking that. So I had my mask on, but I forgot that we're on the honor system, and you don't have to wear your mask if you've already received a vaccine. And the store employees don't have to wear theirs either. I was panicking. I'm thinking, I need to leave this store. What's going on? This is like early pandemic. I'm looking around. Then my brain goes, no, they've received the vaccine. That's why you don't see people wearing masks. They're on the honor system. And then I breathe a sigh of relief, but I still wear my mask when I go to certain places. And I think one of the things that all of us have to think about is what our level of comfort is as we step forward. How will we gradually bring ourselves back out and try to create our own normal? Because I'm a big believer in that, in terms of you must create your own normal.
Okay. So it sounds like, one, if we have some anxiety or depression issues, we should probably expect that,
Yes.
given what we've been through.
Yes. And if you're here, talk to someone about it. Talk to you, Pastor Matt, see a professional, but recognize that you may be depressed. Many people are clinically depressed and they're not talking to people about it. That's the most important thing that we can do, is to talk to each other about it. And some of my clients, they can't wait for us to be face to face again. Come on, when are you going to open the office back up so that we can start seeing each other face to face? But some of my clients don't want to do face to face. They like they're comfortable being at home. And I love the fact that, we made that adjustment at church, that we could watch it on YouTube, and we're right there. Is it the same? No, but you adjust. It's just wonderful that we were able to do that. So, and moving forward, we'll have to figure out, okay, what would church need to look like? Will we still always need to tape it? we can have some people there, and maybe some people, that's how they're going to attend church.
Yeah.
And they don't, so that they don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
And because for some people, it will take them a year. It may take them another year before they will feel comfortable in terms of being back to their normal.
Okay.
I'm looking at this as, in terms of how we look at grief. Everybody grieves differently. If you lose someone in your family, you don't just get over it. It doesn't, at work they'll say, okay, if you lost a family member, okay, well, you can be off 2 weeks, or you can be off 3, you can be off a month. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. And for us, in terms of everything that we've gone through and just the anxiety in terms of trying to manage this, and our worry about loved ones and everything, that's a lot. That took a toll on us, and we don't even realize yet in terms of what that toll is. We don't know yet. That's something that we'll start to figure out down the road.
So the experience of isolation and the legitimate, real fears, the emotional roller coasters, we probably need to pay attention to ourselves, because
Yep.
we may not know how we're going to react
That's right.
until we react.
That's right.
We may see all of a sudden we might lose our temper, or we may feel a rush of anxiety.
That's right.
And that's normal.
That's normal. And then take a step back, process it, and then talk about it and figure it out with a loved one or a professional or your pastors.
Indeed.
It's, like early on, like one of my friends was really disappointed that he had kids and they weren't coming around. And of course they weren't hugging him. And he didn't like it. It's like, well, I haven't been anywhere. And they're like, no, we're doing this for you as your protection, because we have been out there. Okay, so we're working. We have to work. We have jobs that we have to work. So we are doing this for your protection. And it took him a while, but he finally got it. But it made him sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I'm talking to young people. One of my friends, her daughter got married a couple of weeks ago. And one of the first things, she had her injection. She gives me a big hug. She's like, I haven't even been able to see my friends. I haven't seen anybody other than just going to work, seeing a few people at work, seeing just some of my immediate family. That's it. She's 23 years old. And so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. As far as pacing ourselves,
Yeah.
like we were being invited back into more social situations because folks are vaccinated. I had a good conversation with Betsy Elswick this morning, who said that the vaccines are doing a great job.
Right.
That she says that the indications are that even with the variant that came from India,
Right.
that the vaccines are doing a good job of protecting
Right.
folks against that. So we're being invited back into social situations. It sounds like we can expect that some of us are going to be anxious about that, to not feel guilty about that,
That's
but
exactly right.
but to pace ourselves.
Yes. And listen to your own voice. Listen to your own voice. And try not to judge yourself, and try not to be pressured to do something that you're not comfortable to do. I talked to one of my best friends today, and she's someone who has a boat. She's really active. She does stuff all the time. She's a great cook, and she would have people at her house almost every weekend. She has not done that. And she said, John, I have not sat down in a restaurant for the past year and a half. I have not done it. She goes, now I've gone out, but I choose to eat outside. Okay, so figure out what you re-entering that world, what that needs to look like for you. If you want, if you get invited somewhere, if it's an outside event, do the outside event. If it's something that's inside and you choose not to go, just kindly decline or let them know why, and be okay with that, because it's super important for you just to feel comfortable about being in your own skin. And that's one of the things that I try to, encourage people to think about, is just being comfortable in your own skin and just recognizing that, and there's nobody else on this planet exactly like you. Nobody. God created us that way. We all have these unique talents and abilities, and none of us are exactly alike. And that's okay. That's the way we were designed.
Wonderful. So I'm hearing that we've got some work to do, because we've been through some difficult stuff.
Yes.
As you've said, we want to take a step at a time as we are comfortable.
Yes.
We should seek some friends or even clergy or professionals to talk to through things,
Yes.
and take advantage of opportunities to do things online or outside if we're anxious.
Yes.
If we feel good, safer about wearing the mask in situations, that's good as well.
Yes.
We just need to take steps that our mind and our body are going to allow us to take.
Yes. Exactly.
Wonderful.
And one of the things that people talk about, years ago, if someone had seen us wearing these masks, like, what is going on? We've survived this pandemic, right? Okay, so people are giving each other masks as presents, and I'm sure you've gotten some.
Yeah.
I've gotten several, because of course we lose them, we lose some, right?
Yeah.
But they become a part of who we are. Those are going to be markers for this period of time. I was looking downstairs at my refrigerator and having Christmas cards from friends and family, and the whole family's standing outside with they all have their masks on, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And we would know when this was, because those masks are a marker. And so, hey, my mask is my friend. I always have one. I have one in the car, and if I'm feeling uncomfortable about being somewhere, I'm going to put my mask on.
All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, John, thank you for taking some time to share with us and to give us some thoughts in the mind here about how we can start to re-engage with the world at our own pace,
Home base.
and feeling good and safe about it. You said that God has created us different. I'm thankful that God has created John Spraggins. Let me tell you,
Thank you.
you are a joy, and I miss your amens.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to change that, Pastor Mike.
Give me one on YouTube or something.
Amen, Pastor Mike.
Thanks for joining me for the first session of Out of Exile. We've heard that the Spirit of God is moving in many of our hearts to worship and to start to work to rebuild things anew for today. We've heard that the vaccines are doing a remarkably good job, that we still need to be cautious and aware. We've also heard that if we're anxious or find ourselves being depressed, that's normal. We've been through some difficult things, but we can support one another. We can listen to one another. We can talk with each other, and we can pace ourselves for what we're comfortable with. The Spirit is moving, and we are on a list of good names, and we pace ourselves as we re-enter into our lives together. See you for the next session of Out of Exile.